Well, congratulations to those of you for sticking through the day. It's been a great day, but I know it's the end of the day. And when I was putting this together, I was thinking, what is going to be left for me to say, as I'm sure it will all have been covered. And in many respects, you know, we have covered the spectrum of the debate in this particular industry. So what I want to do is try and perhaps summarise it a little bit in a particular analogy, which I've been in bated breath to see if anybody has actually gone into the analogy I'm going to go into. And as every time they've said Tesla, I've thought, oh no, it's coming, but not quite the way I'm going to spin it. And then talk about a couple of things, perhaps to the point you were making about sort of, you know, money flows to where it feels safe and it feels private. And I'm just picking up on that. I want to talk a little bit about data flows to where it feels safe and where it feels private. So that's really all I'm going to cover, a summary with an analogy and then a little bit about safety and trust. Summary. Perfect storm. We've spoken about generational change. We've spoken about the regulatory environment. We've spoken about technology a little bit in terms of, you know, perhaps more the customer end of it, but we've got to think also about the sort of middle and back office. That was touched on. The competitive environment we've touched on as well, with mention to people like Betterment and Nutmeg and Robo Advisory and so forth. Can't quite see that, so I'll have to look behind me, I apologise. But we've spoken about, you know, needing to be agile, about value transparency. We didn't really talk too much about talent, which I hear a lot about with clients I talk to, which is, you know, you've got an older group of employees who are actually engaged on the relationship side of things. And they are going to eventually be sort of moving out of the workforce. And what you want to do is you want to attract younger people who are perhaps more digital natives who can actually, you know, handle some of this world of a blend of technology and advisory. So how do you attract those people? How do you retain them when what they want is a world which is very digital, actually? And if they turned up in some of the offices, you know, with old versions of Windows and Internet Explorer and Office, etc., they might not be too happy. So that's an interesting area that we talk about as well. How do you build new products? We did hear a little bit about that, I think, from Barclays. You know, how do we actually get some new stuff that really challenges? And I like that, you know, get on the offensive as opposed to be, you know, just defensive, just dealing with regulation and price and competition and so forth. How do we actually, you know, take advantage of this digital transformation? We didn't really talk about, which is amazing, I go to a conference and nobody talks about blockchain. Does anyone know what blockchain is? Am I in totally the wrong world here? Okay, a few hands up. So I'll touch on a few of those things. So when we talk about this, I just want to give you the pillars that we talk about digital transformation, because you'll recognize this. We talk about engaging your customers with compelling experiences across all channels, people and technology. Great, we've spent a lot of time talking about that today. We then spend a lot of time talking about empowering your employees because of the reason I mentioned earlier on. You might make a great proposition, you might have some great people, but if they can't do their job, they go crazy, they get frustrated. So they need to be able to deliver whatever it is that equals the best experience that people are seeing outside of this particular industry. We need to obviously optimize operations and make sure that things are really fundamentally, we're moving towards a real-time world. We heard that with the Amazon example of you know, the person being able to refit their luggage in real time and get it delivered to their room. That is the sort of world we're heading towards. And we need to be able to, you know, create new revenue opportunities. We can't just think about managing the cost, etc. So here's an example that we didn't hear about so far, but I think we heard from Diana and Barclays, the sort of Uberization piece. But I prefer this one, which is to do with Tesla. So you can read ahead of me. Basically, it's the GM of General Motors, and he's saying, everybody said it's okay, we don't need to worry. And then along comes these lunatics from California, which is Tesla, who don't know anything about our industry, and then they transform the world. They break the logjam with regards to this area, lithium-ion technology. In a sense, we've all had this. We've heard about the Kodak moments. Microsoft, you know, we said, I think mobile phones aren't going to be very popular. And then you heard about how we tried to recover from that and really haven't been very successful in that regard. complacency, there is no room for complacency in any of our industries, and particularly at the moment. So the reason I like Tesla better than Uber is because what does it talk about? It talks about a company that comes from Silicon Valley that doesn't know really anything about the automotive industry. It talks about a guy, and I think you've probably all read a little bit about this world, who thinks about the way they work. Agile operations, rapid development, creating a product which is a minimum viable product, but that does not mean poor quality, very high quality. Attract revenue to this new idea and this new experimentation through the success of it, and then start to move down through the other sectors and segments that you want to go to. But more than that, they've changed their sort of business model, haven't they? Everybody in the car industry is really talking about horizontal integration, and they've gone to vertical integration. They've looked at the showroom and the dealership experience, and they've said, we need to own that if we're going to break into this marketplace. And we need to do it in a totally different way. You go to shopping malls in Seattle and you just have a sort of, next to the Apple store and the Microsoft store, there's the Tesla store, and you can go in and you can configure your product on a computer. You can look at a few interesting sort of models of the car and explosions of it. But fundamentally, it's a totally different experience, and you meet different kinds of people in there who are talking to you in a very, very dynamic and interesting way. They've gone further. They said, now the next problem is the charging network. How are we actually going to handle that? So they actually take a piece of that whole electrification, the charging network on the roads as well. They then also, they had other challenges, didn't they? They had to come into an industry which is regulated. So they chose a platform which was somebody else's. They chose the Lotus platform on their first car, which was a regulated platform to build their first product. They also they do their things like their batteries, and they actually now sell those on to other companies. And also they've moved into other areas. They've moved into solar panels, they moved into house batteries, all sorts of areas. And in fact, what they do is they don't call themselves a car company, an automobile company. I think they call themselves an energy innovation company. And the point of this is that really what they're talking about is, if we start with a particular mindset, which is this agile, this DevOps, this MVP, this broad vision, which also we heard with Uber, we can move into other markets and other products, and we are not constrained in our thinking, in our culture, or in what the market accepts that we can do. And when we look at most industries, and I think this industry is the same, we actually are rather more constrained in our people and our culture and our processes and our technology to what we were, not necessarily what we will be. So, transforming your products. Quite a lot of the time I've spent the last few years talking to retail banks about the customer experience, the people experience, the operational experience. And now they're getting to the product piece. How can we build new products? So really, that's where we want to spend a little bit of time. So the analogy, when we go back from Tesla to this industry, is think about what they've done. They've got a car, it drives down the road, it's full of sensors, streaming back data to an intelligent cloud in real time. So the semi-autonomous driver, who is going along the road quite happily, not worrying about anything that's going on, hands off the wheel, maybe watching some sort of TV program of the future. You'll be allowed to do that as you drive down the motorway, God forbid. But suddenly something happens. The car responds to it, okay? I think there's an example, isn't there? Somebody had a heart attack and then it actually drove over to the side of the road, parked the car and alerted the emergency services. So you have a regulated, dangerous, risky, volatile environment, and you have this thing which is responding in real time to circumstances. Now you think about the sort of semi-autonomous investor. Why can it not be? I think we've heard it today, where this thing that they're using, be it the computer, the phone, whatever the endpoint is, it's giving them information which just makes them feel comfortable. The robo-advisor perhaps is the language we're using here. And they don't really need to worry about anything. But just at the right time, it says, hang on a minute, Brexit ahead. Turn left, Trump, towers, whatever, you know what I'm saying. So it gives information at the optimal channel, at the optimal time, and the optimal message. Now, it might be that it says you need to pull in for a service. What does that mean? It means you actually go and meet your advisor, and you get the personal piece. Now, when it comes to a lot of this is cognitive, artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's exactly the same sort of stuff, technology, that's delivering this capability. And so what we sort of believe, wholly agree with what people have said here today, is it's about the sort of centaur. It's the combination, as we heard before, of the person getting digital superpowers combined with the rich interactive experience for the people that want it. I take that point entirely. If you're my grandfather, 80, he probably doesn't want this. But you are building the right blend of experiences between the two. So we have personal digital assistants, we have advice on the go, we have the right message. We're using all of this technology in the background, and then we can start to change perhaps business models as well. So we get this called a picture perhaps where, this is just the car process, but it's a bit similar, isn't it? We've got R&D going on. We've got manufacturing, we're building the products, we're putting them out there. We've got sales and service, and customer. But what we now do, because we've got this sort of cloud-based, let's call it banking as a service, call it what you will, we've got this deep and continuous engagement, if you're following me. The car, the driving, deep and continuous engagement, the same in financial services. And we're looking, again, at the customer persona, not just at the segment. We're looking at that individual. That person driving down that road in that moment and the issues they're facing. It's their person, it's their financial wellness markers. And we're looking for them the next best action, the short-term goals towards their next step of financial wellness. Now, I wanted to show you this one quickly because you might go, well, this is fine. We're dealing with customer relationship management. We've got the idea. But also there's big waves coming through. So here was a partner of mine in Germany, and they're talking about a world that they're building out for asset owners where they are going to go straight through to the wealth managers. They're going to build them products and dashboards and interactions, etc., and they're going to cut out the mutual funds. So that's kind of one bit of disintermediation, which I'm sure you've all got your versions of that. Then we did a launch the other day with another company called Red Pixie, who KPMG, Microsoft, and ourselves have got together with, and they're looking at the whole of the world of settlement and the processes and the players within that. And they've built a platform. They're people who previously built things like Aladdin, and they're saying we're just going to completely change that with blockchain. We're going to use blockchain where it's appropriate. We use other technology where it's appropriate, but we're going to get rid of the many intermediaries and the settlement process. We're going to reduce the time, and it's something we can deliver very fast. So not only is this a customer experience thing, that middle and back office there are many, many people that are trying to attack it. Some will succeed, some will fail, and we can spend another time talking about this in a bit more detail. But one of the things, back to the point about trust, if you like, the money flows to where it's safe and where it's private, we find the same with data. So we haven't spoken at all today about the cloud, because when you go back to your office and you say, right, how can we do all these great things we've heard about, you're stuck with a lot of legacy technology that's going to stop you from achieving good things. And the born in the cloud people, the people that are your kind of nimble competitors, are using this hyperscale cloud technology because it means they can focus on the business process and not worry about all that technology gobbledygook, which I've been spending my life talking about, but really gets out of your way. But the key issue is you're regulated, and regulators, have had challenges with the cloud. So I wanted to talk about this briefly, so you know that what we have done is spent the last 3 years talking to regulators around the world. We have listened to what they have said is needed for the industry. We've responded with both technology and with contracts, which means that banks around the world of all sizes and shapes are very happily now on the cloud already. It's not a future, they're doing it. And what allowed them to do it was that for all customers, and there's a longer conversation, we've dealt with all of the issues about privacy, data, model clauses, and so on and so forth. That's just a given for our customers. UK data centre now, the Ministry of Defence was our first customer on the UK data centre. They have some issues of security as well, so we've got a good one there. But for FSI, we put in place an amendment which gives the regulator the right to examine, which is, has always been one of the barriers to adoption of things like the cloud. We also go further. We have a compliance program whereby you can send in your auditor to look at the way that we handle denial of service, we handle penetration attacks, our controls, our risk framework, so that you then can go back to your regulator and say, this is how we're not outsourcing our risk, we are working with a partner to make this happen. And so we did an event last June, and in that event we had globally systemically important banks such as Societe Generale, Royal Bank of Scotland, Mitsubishi, whole different classes saying we are now using this cloud technology and we're using it for mission critical workloads. So when you go back to your offices, I know you'll face people saying this is going to be hard to deliver. I just want you to think about the cloud options. And to summarize, where we look at it is we put it all into one place. We worry very much about obviously our capabilities, but we worry about it for you in the sense of engaging your customers, your employees, transforming your products, but wrapping that up in a very strong fabric of trust and security so that you can do a business that your customers will rely on. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.